All right, so hopefully this is the last day that I'm missing. Today was planned. I already knew I was going to be gone today, so I'm actually working over at the alternative ed building. So hopefully my kids are all not sick and better, and I'll be back with you guys tomorrow. But I want to walk you through what I want you to accomplish today. For some of you, this is going to be a pretty easy day. I was looking through some of you guys' work in your Google Docs folders, and some people have everything done in pretty much the way it's supposed to, and today will be pretty easy. For others of you guys, you're going to have quite a bit to do today. Today's kind of finish up what you started yesterday and a catch-up day. So I want to walk you through what you need to do and where you need to be by tomorrow when you come in. So we're going to kind of start by backtracking a little bit. I want to take you back to the notes that you're supposed to read and mark up from yesterday. Just kind of walk you through briefly what mine would look like. This is what I would have if I was you and I was reading and marking up the textbook. Yesterday we started out with why did World War I happen? We talked about the main reasons: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. And we talked about the spark of the assassination of the heir to the Austrian-Hungary throne, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and then everybody jumped in after that. Then we went to why was the U.S. getting involved? And we talked about how the U.S. kind of wanted to stay on the sidelines. President Wilson had no interest in getting involved in the war. He said it wasn't our war. We traditionally stayed out of European affairs. It wasn't worth the cost. We didn't want anything to do with it. But we started trading with them, the Allies and the Central Powers, but mostly with the Allies, lending them money, sending things back and forth. The Germans sunk a British ship called the Lusitania that had 120 or so Americans on it. It was carrying weapons, but that wasn't really made known at the time. And people got excited, upset, and wanted to jump into the war. Germany sent a note to Mexico that was intercepted by the British that we call the Zimmerman Note, saying that they would help the Mexicans if they joined the war against the United States. Should the U.S. ever invade. So all these things, the money we were loaning, the weapons makers were pushing to get into the war, you combine all that with these things and you get America in the war. So what we were supposed to do yesterday, or what the purpose of yesterday was to look at how was the impact at home. So what kind of things happened at home and how did that affect our country. So what I want to do is just run through your notes, you're marking up. Some of you got past this. If you want to pause this video and make yours look like mine, that's fine. If you did a good job and you want to make yours look like they look, that's fine. If you haven't got this far, as I talk through it, you can split your screen and you can make yours look like mine. Either way, it doesn't matter, but I want to run you through this real quick. So the first part talks about our soldiers going to war. And the thing you need to know is that in 1917, we were trying to stay neutral. We basically had an army that wasn't really going to do anything in Europe. So we had, 107,000 men. We had basically no navy. It wasn't like we were prepping for war like we saw in World War II, where we were already getting ready. We didn't have anybody, and we didn't want to, because we had every intention of staying out of the war. So within a year, just following my blue highlights here, we'd had a 5 million man army, and our forces ended up being the decisive factor in stopping the German offensive and basically making World War I end, because the Germans realized they couldn't win, and so they wanted to negotiate a peace. So we saw by early 1917, kind of the history here is the Allied forces were about ready to collapse. Russia had surrendered. Essentially, there was a communist revolution with the Bolsheviks, and the Russian had accepted the Germans' peace agreement. So the Germans pulled out of the Eastern Front, and they were able to take all their forces and attack Britain and France. And Britain and France were on the verge of collapse. So to raise troops, we have a draft. 23 million people are registered during the draft, but 2.8 million or so draftees served in the armed forces. So you need to understand that it wasn't people volunteering. We forced people to fight. When we got there, we made a big difference in a hurry. The Germans were sort of like on the verge of possibly winning the war. They were advancing. Our troops, my comment over here on the side for that paragraph, our American soldiers quickly made a difference in the war. And so by March of 1918, we'd stopped the German advance. Okay, so the Germans had a numerical advantage. They had more troops. They were going to eventually win, but all of a sudden there's 1.5 million American troops in England and in Europe in the last 6 months of the war. So all of a sudden now the Germans are 600,000 troops less than the Allies. So basically that large number of American troops made the Germans, the Hungarians ask for peace. Basically, they're like, okay, shoot, we can't win. We had the numerical advantages. Now we're not going to be able to do this, and we got to stop. So that's the first thing you need to understand. Is on the home front, we see a draft. We see people being sent over, and that's going to lead to the kind of the second session here. As the war advanced, we needed more weapons, and that created jobs in the Northeast and Midwestern cities. Basically, we see this term called the Great Migration, where we have people move from the South to the North to fill these jobs. And these jobs are available because we have people being drafted and shipped out, just like World War II, and because we have more demand in factories to create weapons and guns. So that's the first thing. Impact on the home front sends a lot of people away. Second thing is it causes a big change in population shift. So we see these people moving from the south to the north, a lot of minorities, and they create ethnically diverse and distinct neighborhoods. So this would have impacted Michigan a lot because of the auto industry was developing in Michigan at this time. During the war, we see that several kind of controversial laws passed, and you're going to look at that a little bit with your chart, but the Espionage Act of 1917 made it a crime to communicate any information that would interfere with the war effort or aid its enemies. Think about the impact of that. We'll talk about it later, but that's pretty major stuff. You can't say anything bad about the government or the war effort, or you can go to jail. So a lot of people supported this, although it violated the First Amendment. If we kind of go down here a little bit, we see that another thing the government did was create the CPI. And my comment over here on the side is that we knew that we had a problem with loyalty because a lot of people were of German descent or of Irish descent, and they didn't like the Allies. So we knew that a lot of people had sort of mixed emotions about this at best, and that some people would downright didn't want us to go to war against the Germans. So Wilson creates the Committee on Public Information, which is another one of these sort of crazy things in today's world. Basically, this was a propaganda effort where the government was going to control as much information as possible, to the point where the government put advertisements in magazines, they distributed pamphlets, they created this huge advertising campaign and control of information. They encouraged filmmakers to make movies, and the government really controls all the media, which we can't really imagine in today's world, but back then they did, and it got public to support the war. We scroll down to the last section here, we'll see that one of the side effects of that public campaign to kind of make the Germans look bad is that the German and Irish communities who had strongly supported neutrality, they strongly supported the Germans, they were made to look really bad in public opinion. Not only were we fighting them, but people hated them. So as we entered the war, we searched for spies and saboteurs, and we tried to suppress German culture. Okay, German newspapers are shut down, public schools stopped teaching German, Lutheran churches, which still use German language quite a bit, quit speaking in Germans. So kind of my comment for, sort of these middle paragraphs over here on the side is anything associated with Germany was taken out of public life, and people of German descent were forced to prove their loyalty. This doesn't go as far as what we saw in World War II. We don't intern the Germans. Remember, we talked about the racism with the Japanese. You can see this is the precursor to that. But we do say anybody that looks German, acts German, talks German, we rename pretzels to, American bread, and we do all this stuff that you can read in there. Anything was unpatriotic, but we don't go as far as to, ship off the Germans to put them in camps. Because they look like everyone else, and it was hard to determine who was German, and B, because there was too many of them. But this is distinct and different from what we saw with Japanese internment. kind of the last thing I highlighted was perhaps the most horrendous anti-German act was when an angry mob in 1918 basically got a German guy who was accused of disloyal utterances. Like he was accused of saying something bad about the war, and they hung him before his trial. So that's not something we would normally associate. We would normally associate that with racism, this whole idea of lynching. But it did happen in other cases, and it just kind of shows you that's a good example of how strongly the anti-German sentiment was and the home front during World War I. So if you didn't have this already done before, or if you need to go back and fix yours, you can pause the video, you can go back. If you want to make yours look like mine, that's fine. That's up to you. Second thing I want you to do is I want you to go to your domestic impact chart. You were supposed to have filled in the first column. If you haven't already done that, here's some answers to help you out. But what we're looking for is there are 6 different things that happened during World War I as a result of World War I that impacted the home front that I want you guys to know about. And these are all government-controlled things, and you were supposed to put in a description. Make sure you understand your description. I saw some of you guys just copied and pasted your description. That's okay if you understand it, but if it's not in your own words, then make sure you put it in your own words. If you can't tell me what the War Industry Board is, then you haven't done this right. So to kind of run through these descriptions real quick, the War Industry Board was the government's attempt to control production of materials. So it set prices, allocated raw materials, and told manufacturers what to produce. So the government creates this War Industries Board. It's centralized. It's okay, you make this, you make this, you make this. More efficient, and we'll talk about that, what arguments for and against in a second. But I just want to run through all these. National War Labor Board attempted to mediate labor disputes. Again, government control over the economy. Basically said you can't go on strike, unions. You can't do anything. This is what you're going to get paid, so that we don't have any issue. Because remember, labor's in short supply because we're shipping people over to fight the war, and so unions couldn't go on strike. This said this is what the pay is going to be. Here's what you do. The Espionage and Sedition Acts were basically they're the same thing. The Sedition Act basically is an amendment to the Espionage Act, and these are like interesting because they accomplish a purpose, but they kind of big time violate civil rights. So first one, espionage in 1917 made it illegal to interfere with the war effort. So if you said the war is bad, you were in a gray area. The Sedition Act of 1918 made public speech against the war illegal. So you weren't even allowed to criticize it by 1918. So if you think about Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, all those protests would have been illegal. You could have gone to jail for saying, hey, this is a bad war, we shouldn't be there. That's how much control the government had at that point. The Committee on Public Research was the other one, and that was public information, and that was the one we just talked about a little bit. So this was the advertising campaign to support our entry into the war. And you need to understand it wasn't just at home, it was also abroad. So we were advertising and using kind of like psychological warfare in favor of our entering the war, which is sort of ironic because in other countries, I mean, think about the Sedition Act up here, which made it illegal to speak against the war, and then the government speaking for the war. So you kind of think what was going on there. The purpose of this chart is so you guys can think about why would people support this and why would people be against it. So arguments for, why would this be a good thing? Okay, so what I'm looking for is why would this be a good thing? How would this help the war effort? So if you want to type those questions in, you can do that, but I'm looking for you to think about why would this be a good thing? How would it help the war effort? The other thing is, what would this do to hurt our country? So what I want you to do is I want you to think about what would this do those are kind of the two questions there. What would this do to hurt our country? Is this against what we stand for? So we're kind of giving up freedom to be security. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to use the websites below. You can work with a stroller partner to do this. I'm going to help you on the first one, and I want you to go through all these and think about what would be an argument for this. Why would this be a good thing? How would it help the war effort? And then I also want you to take the opposing viewpoint and how would this hurt our country? What do we have to give up? Is this against what we stand for? So I have samples. We'll go over the rest of this on Thursday, but here's what I came up with. Okay, and again, you're going to look through the website, you're going to think about what this thing is, and then you're going to make your best guess. But I do want you to try. So you don't, this isn't a, if you're not exactly sure, think about what this means, look at the websites, and explain to me, best guess, how do you think this helps or hurts us? So the War Industry Board, how it helped us, because it basically was going to create a situation where we produce things more efficiently, and it was essential for waging war. So why was this needed? Why would this be a good thing? Because if we did this, this meant that we would win the war. If we lost the war, it would be a problem. It was only a temporary thing. So if you supported this, you say it's only temporary. It's theoretically not going to last for a long time. If we lose the war, we're going to lose all of our freedom. So it's okay to give up some freedom if we win the war. The arguments against this, so on the other side, is that this interferes with the free market economy. This isn't who we are. We're free. This is America. Okay? So this means the sort of the cornerstone of who we are is compromised. So this is ruining who we are. So argument against this, it's not okay to give up who we are to try and win a war. We're compromising our values for that. So I don't expect your answers to be kind of, this complicated, but I want you to run through. You can work with your shoulder partner on this, but I want you to run through the rest of these columns and I want you to fill them in. So do the best that you can for each one. Give me an honest effort and we'll talk about them on Thursday. That takes me back to the directions. So this is attached to today's Schoology post, and what I want you guys to do, if you are done, if you're done with everything, I just want you to check your organization. This is kind of the catch-up part. Some of you aren't going to have a lot of catching up. Some of you are going to have quite a bit. So depending on what you finished, you may have a little bit to do, a lot to do. Okay, first thing I want you to do after you finish the chart, so number 2 on this list, is I want to make sure you're organized. So everything should be shared in your drive. If you haven't already done it, you should create a World War I folder in your War and Conflict folder. Okay, so make a folder, put everything in it so you have everything for World War I in one place. At this point, here's the list of things you should have. You can click on the links in the document. You won't be able to on the video, but in the document, it'll take you directly to it. I put what day they were posted to Schoology. So you can see if you missed a day or if you're not sure what something is, you can see where it came from. Here's the links. This is what you need to have. This is what needs to be done when I come in tomorrow. So make sure you have everything in this list done. You should have at least some of it done, but if you don't have everything, then you need to go back and finish it up. So if after I run through this, you're all done with this, I'll tell you what to do next. But we run through it real quick. You need to have your World War I intro done, and you need to have the notes for the YouTube video done. Okay, so at the very top of it, you had to take notes on the main causes of World War I, and you need to have that taken care of. You don't need to have anything else done in that document, just the notes at the top. Second thing is you should have notes from the World War I intro lecture video, which was posted on Monday. Okay, I said you can name the document however you like. Some of you I saw that this document, others I couldn't figure it out. I need to be able to identify it as World War I notes, so you may need to rename it. If you didn't do it, you need to go back and do it. But there's a lecture video, and even if you scrub through the video, it shows you exactly what my notes look like. You can copy those notes. Just make sure you have something in your World War I folder called World War I notes or World War I intro notes. Third thing you need to have in your folder is the SHEG U.S. history or U.S. entry into World War I, and that's from Monday. And there's the link to it. If you click on the document, you need to have it marked up. You need to have the questions completed and the central historical question at the end completed. That's 2 to 3 paragraphs. Third thing is the impact on the Homefront textbook excerpt. That's from Tuesday. That's the thing that I just went through with you and showed you my marking up. So you need to have a copy of that in your thing. And then you also need to have the impact of World War I chart that I just explained to you. So that leaves you with sort of a list of things that you need to have. All these things need to be done. It should be reasonable by the end of today that you have those things taken care of. If you haven't done any of those or some of them, or they're not organized, finish. That's what you need to do right now. If you have everything done, which I know some of you have everything done, you're caught up based on what I saw in your shared folders, then I want you to go down here to the bottom. And there's some videos on World War I from history.com. I don't want to give you, this is stuff that you only do if you have everything else done. So if you don't get to the videos, that's perfectly fine. I don't want you to sit here and not do anything. These videos are all 3-4 minutes long, and they will do a really good job of kind of filling in the gaps, giving you a visual of the reading and stuff you did, so it'll benefit you to do the videos. So if you're done, your job is to be working on World War I. You can watch these in any order that you want. You can watch as many of them as you get to. There's enough here for you to keep busy through the end of the war. There's some pretty interesting stuff. The trench videos are pretty cool. The idea of technology in some of the battles you'll see. So there's plenty here. And if you would rather read instead of watch a video, you can look at some of these different things down here about the people. That's a pretty cool infographic about like the numbers. But you should be occupied with World War I. So everybody should have something to do for the rest of the hour. If you don't finish up this set of directions, if your World War I folder doesn't look like this and isn't shared with me, it's homework. It needs to be done tomorrow. You can come in at lunch and use a computer if it's okay with your sub. You can come in tomorrow before school, but this is what I'm expecting to see. So hopefully get everything done, and hopefully I'm back tomorrow. If you have questions on things, make sure you take notes of what your questions are, what you want more explanation. I'm going to leave time on Thursday, and that's basically going to say, hey, what do you want me to tell you about? What do you need more about? So good luck with everything, and hopefully you get it done.